Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya Namaskaram. Today I'm going to be talking about verse 32 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham. This is one of a series of verses where Bhagavan is talking about the state of the jnani. This is the verse where he talks about the so-called fourth state. And as he explains in this verse, though it is called the fourth, it's actually the only state, the only existing state. So what he says in this verse is, Nanavu kanavu tuil odu, Nanavu kanavu tuil naduvaku, apal nanavu tuil turium namatu enum. Achurium ade ulladal, tondrum mundrum indral, turium atitum tuni. It's not turium atitum, it's turia vatitum. So it's a compound. The meaning of the first sentence means, for those who experience waking, dream, and sleep, waking sleep beyond is called by the name turiya. What that implies is, for those who experience waking, dream, and sleep, waking sleep, which that nanavutuil, or what in Sanskrit is called Jagrat Shushupti, which is our eternal and immutable state of pure awareness in which we are awake to or clearly aware of ourselves as we actually are, and therefore asleep to or unaware of everything else whatsoever. And then the next word is apal. Apal means what is beyond or what is transcending the other three states. The implication is, meaning of apal is beyond, but it implies that this waking sleep is beyond the other three states, is called by the name turiya. Turiya is a Sanskrit word that means the fourth. In Sanskrit, there are two forms of the word, turiya and turiya. But in Tamil, the word Bhagavan has used here is turiya, which is the shortened form. But in Tamil, an extra I is added just for the for euphony, for smooth sound. So the implication is it's only for those who take waking, dream, and sleep who experience it and therefore take them to be real, but waking sleep, the real state, which is beyond all of these, is called the fourth. The implication is it's not actually the fourth, it's the only existing state. And that he states clearly in the first clause of the second sentence, Achuriam ade ulladal. That means since that turiya alone exists, since it alone exists, it's obviously not the fourth, it's the only state. So, but by formality, it's called the fourth because it is beyond waking, dream, and sleep. But it's actually the only really existing state. So what he says in the next sentence is, Achuriya ade ulladal, since that turiya alone exists, tondrum mundru indral, since the three that appear do not exist. That is, though waking, dream, and sleep appear and disappear, since they appear and disappear, they don't actually exist, they merely seem to exist. So he says, since they do not exist, so what actually exists is only turiya, not these three. These three don't exist. Turiya vatita. Turiya vatita is a Tamil compound equivalent to a Sanskrit compound, turiya atita. So there's no, that is the main clause of this sentence, is simply Churiya Vatita. So something is implied here which is not stated clear, not stated explicitly, but what is clearly implied is, since Churiya alone exists, it itself is transcending Churiya. That is, it transcends the need for any such names such as Churiya. What Bhagavan is clarifying, I mean, he ends with the word tuni, which means be assured. So what Bhagavan is, well, first, two things he's saying here. In the first sentence, he's saying that the implication of the first sentence is, though this real state is called the fourth, it's not actually the fourth. It's only for those, because we experience waking, dream, and sleep, this state, the real state, which is beyond these, which transcends these, is called the fourth in relation to these three. But since so the first sentence implies that it's not actually the fourth. It's only called the fourth by formality. He makes that more clear in the second sentence by saying, since that Churiya alone exists. Since it alone exists, it's obviously not the fourth, it's the only state. Since that Churiya alone exists, and since the three that appear do not exist, Churiya Vatita. What he is clarifying here is this term Churiya, the actual term doesn't come from the Mandukya Upanishad, but the concept comes from the Mandukya Upanishad. In Mandukya Upanishad, this real state is referred to as the fourth, but they don't use the word Churiya. I think some other Sanskrit word, chatu or something. It also means the fourth. The word Churiya was used by Gaudapada in his Karika, in his verse commentary on the Mandukya Upanishad. The Mandukya Upanishad is a very short Upanishad. I think it consists of just 12 mantras. But Gaudapada has written a detailed commentary on it in verse form. The 12 mantras are incorporated in and explained in the first chapter of the Mandukya Karika, and the next 3 chapters develop the central ideas further. So Gaudapada used this term Churiya. So since the time of Gaudapada, by convention, the real state has been referred to as Churiya. However, there are many states that also talk about Churiyatita. And many people take Churiya to be the fourth, Churiyatita beyond the fourth. Obviously, it's a fifth state. They take it to be another state. And there are many books, I think even in some commentaries on some yoga commentaries or some yogic texts, they actually talk about it as, say explicitly that Churiyatita is a fifth state, which is beyond the fourth. But what Bhagavan is clarifying here, as he says, Churiyam ade Uڵḷadu, since Churiya alone exists, and since the three do not exist, 2 implications are there. Churiya itself is what is called Churiyatita. That's one implication. So there's no Churiyatita other than Churiya. Atita means what is transcends. The other meaning is that Churiyatita can mean the transcendent state called Churiya. That is the idea. It's transcendent because it transcends the other 3. It doesn't mean that it transcends the fourth. That is what Bhagavan is clarifying here. So Churiya itself is Churiyatita, is the implication. And it's called Churiya, it's called Atita, beyond, because it's beyond the fourth. So what we have to understand from the name Churiyatita is the transcendent state, the state that transcends the other 3 states. There's 3 states of our experience, and it is called the fourth. So that is a compound such as Turiya would normally be taken to mean that is the normal interpretation of the term is Turiya means beyond the fourth. But since the fourth alone exists, there cannot be anything that is beyond it. So what is the intended meaning of Turiya is the transcendent state called the fourth. That is what is implied by this name. It's not how this compound word would normally be interpreted, but this is the meaning, because if some people take the waking, dream, and sleep to be real, therefore they take the so-called waking state, they take that to be a fourth state. And since this term Turiya is used in some texts, they assume that there must be some fifth state even beyond Turiya. That's how it is interpreted by many people. That's a very prevalent interpretation. But Bhagavan is making it very clear in this verse that what actually exists is only Turiya. So there's nothing either prior to Turiya or beyond Turiya. Since nothing is prior to it, it's not the fourth. Since nothing is beyond it, it alone is what is called Turiya. It is the transcendent state that by formality, as a formality, is referred to as the fourth, though it is actually the only existing state. Is that a clear explanation of what Bhagavan intends to imply in this verse?
Yes. So just looking, I think in one of the articles in your blog, you wrote this. I'm going to read it. That captures it nicely. It is called Turiyatita, within parentheses, the fourth transcending, I think. Maybe the parenthetic material may not be there. I might have added it. Based on
I may have added that. I may have added it.
So it is called Turiyatita, within parentheses, the fourth transcending, because it is the only state that actually exists. And hence, it transcends not only the other three states, but also transcends any scope for it to be enumerated as the fourth.
Exactly, yeah. That is, the two implications are there. It is a transcendent state, because it transcends the other three states. And it's also transcendent in the sense that since it's the only existing state, it transcends any need to call it the fourth.
Right. I think that was well put, because this is a lot of people get confused on this, and the translation is almost never correct. When they say transcending the fourth, that that implies as though there's a fifth state.
Exactly.
But, I thought that sentence was well framed.
But there cannot be anything that transcends the only existing state.
Exactly.
So Bhagavan makes that very clear. And it's very clear in the Mandukya Upanishad. If we understand it correctly, particularly in the light of Gaudapada's commentary, the fourth, but though it's called the fourth, it's the only real state.
Right. So, and that is from the glossary, what I just read, from the new glossary that we have, right. Path of Sri Ramana book.
Right.
So, and then the waking, I just wanted to also clarify the terminologies. When we just say Nanavu Kanavu Tuyil, which is waking, dream, and sleep. And a lot of people do get confused. Sleep, when in scriptural terms, when we say sleep, we really are referring to the dreamless sleep.
Yeah, in Vedanta, always sleep means
dreamless sleep.
Dreamless sleep, There are three states.
And then dream means the sleep with dream. So, we will just say waking, dream, and sleep. And what that really means is waking, sleep with dream, and sleep without dream. So,
Well, but I mean, it's complicated to say like that. So we need to get used to the idea that in any Vedantic text, when talking about sleep, it is talking about dreamless sleep. It implies dreamless sleep.
Right.
because dream is not a state of sleep. Dream is a state of dream. Though it seems to occur within sleep, from the perspective of a waking state, it's a distinct state.
Right. Very good, Michael. And then let me just look at the verse one more time.
And about the term Bhagavan uses here, Nanavu Tuyil, which is a Tamil form of the Sanskrit term Jagrat Sushupti, literally means waking sleep. The reason it's called waking sleep is it's a state of pure awareness. The state of pure awareness, it's a state of full awakening, but it's a sleep to everything else. But when we say asleep to everything else, even that's a formality to say that, because there is no everything else for it to be asleep to. It is awake to what alone actually exists, namely itself. Right. And therefore, it is not at all aware of other things which are just an illusory appearance, but appear only in the view of ego.
Right. I was losing the thought here. Yeah, I just wanted to mention the waking. So waking sleep, though the name appears that way, it is not a passive state. You know, it's one actively abiding in one's awareness. You know, we don't want to think that it's like a no thought state either. You know.
Yeah, but I don't think we even want to say it's actively abiding, because we can't say abiding means being. That's why it's called waking. That is, it's analogous to sleep. It's similar to sleep in that we are not aware of any phenomena. But it is a state of clear awakening, full clarity of awareness.
Not the no-thought state.
Yeah. Well, it is a no-thought state, but it's not a state of manolaya. It is what is called the state of manonasa. Because once the root thought, I, is annihilated, the root thought I means ego. Once ego is annihilated, then to whom could any thoughts appear? Thoughts are just an appearance. To whom do they appear? Only to a first thought called I, namely ego.
Where exactly did this term Turiyatita come? Is that also coming from the Karika?
I don't think it comes from Mandukya Karika. It's used in a lot of texts. I believe it's used in some yogic texts. It may be used in Yoga Vashista, I'm not sure, but it's certainly used in later Vedantic texts also. Used and misused also. I mean, many people misunderstand it, they misinterpret it. But in the context of Advaita Vedanta, it was never intended to mean a fifth state. Because there's no room in Advaita Vedanta, there's no room for more than one. But I think it's possibly mentioned the term was possibly used in some Vedantic scriptures and then picked up by followers of various forms of yoga and misinterpreted by them. I don't think anyone who believes that there's a fifth state beyond the fourth state has not understood Advaita properly, or they disagree with Advaita.
Right. What is the practical implication of this verse? Or is he just clarifying, or is it more?
Well, he's clarifying. But firstly, he's clarifying. We shouldn't get confused by all these terms. Though it's called the fourth, it's not actually the fourth. It's the only existing state. And though there's another term, Turiyatita, we shouldn't get further confused by that to think that there's a fifth state. What is what is called Turiya is the only existing state, and that alone is what is called Turiyatita. So there is only one state. So the practical implication is everything that what we now experience, the waking, dream, and sleep, are unreal, because there are three states only in the view of ego. If we investigate ourselves, we as ego will dissolve and remain as Satchit, which is what is called the fourth. And what is also called the fourth transcending.
Right.
Because it transcends everything. And it transcends all appearances.
So,
and it transcends ego, to whom all appearances appear.
Right. So Barbara, I know you posted the question. Can you go ahead and read it yourself, please?
The question is, when the jnani is in the turiya state all the time, endlessly, but yet he functions in the world, and the world is an appearance. How does that work in the dream state? I mean, does he experience dreams as a dream?
The jnani. Are you talking about the jnani? I didn't quite catch the beginning part of your question.
Yes, I'm talking about the state. If the jnani is in the turiya state constantly, but yet he functions in the world, seeing the state as a dream.
Okay, the jnani is not in Turiya. The jnani is Turiya itself. As Bhagavan often said, jnana me jnani. That means jnana alone is the jnani. Because jnana means pure awareness. Jnani means what knows pure awareness. What knows pure awareness? Only pure awareness can know pure awareness, because pure awareness can never be an object of awareness. So we can know pure awareness only by being pure awareness. So the jnani is nothing other than pure awareness. Yeah, the jnani is Satchit.
Okay.
The jnani does not function in the world. The jnani has, in the view of the jnani, there's no such thing as mind or body or world or anything. There is only jnana. However, from the perspective of the ajnani,
okay,
the jnani seems to be a body, because we as ajnanis mistake ourselves to be a body. We mistake Bhagavan to be a body. What is Bhagavan's primary teaching? Deham naham, I am not this body.
Right.
So when he teaches us that we are not the body, we still want to impose a body upon him. That we need to understand that his bodily form appears only in our view.
Okay, sure.
What we need, that doesn't mean we need to discard the bodily form, because though that bodily form is not Bhagavan, what is shining through that bodily form, that is Bhagavan. So all the clarity, all the love that shines through that bodily form, that is Bhagavan, not the bodily form. If Bhagavan were that bodily form, he'd be limited in time, he'd be limited in space. He'd be limited to one particular object. How can it be? He is Satyam Jnanam Anantam. That's how he's described in the Upanishads. He's the infinite being, the infinite awareness. So he's beyond all form, all names and forms. But out of because he is he is love itself, out of the love that is himself, he manifests outwardly in the form of this body in order to tell us the term within.
I understand all that. But
so we think Bhagavan is operating in the world. We think Bhagavan is walking around the hill, writing poems, cutting the vegetables, answering questions, all these things. But this is only in our view, not in his view. This is something.
okay, so
this is something he often emphasized.
Okay, so dreaming is not something he ever does.
If we take him to be a body, or in other words, if we take him to be a person, then he outwardly seems to be like any other person.
Right.
So sometimes if someone asks him, Bhagavan, do you dream? He'll say, yes, I dream. Because they're asking it of the person that he seems to be.
Okay, got it.
As a seeming person, he has a seeming waking, seeming sleep, and seeming dream.
Okay,
But as he makes clear in this verse, in his view, none of these exist at all. What exists is only what is called Turiya. In other words, the one real state of Satchit.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. That's really great.
Right.
Good. Thank you, Michael. So Richard asks, in the Gita, there's a verse where it states that the day of the sage is the night of the ignorant, and the day of the ignorant is night to the sage. Is there an equivalence here in this verse?
Yeah, I think that is implied. How I would understand that Gita verse is, let's put it very simply. What we see as a snake, Bhagavan sees as a rope. So what we see as this world of names and forms and everything, all this multiplicity, is what Bhagavan sees as one, as himself. So all this world seems to us to be day. The one reality that we actually are is night to us, because we're not aware of it as it actually is. In fact, but according to Bhagavan, we're aware of nothing other than that. But though we're aware of that, we're not aware of it as it is, because instead of being aware of it as one, we're aware of it as all this multiplicity.
Yes. Yes.
So Bhagavan is awake to the one and asleep to the multiplicity. We are asleep to the one and awake to the multiplicity.
Yeah.
So what that Gita verse is alluding to is the state that Bhagavan is referring to here as Nanavutuvil, waking sleep. He's awake to what actually exists, and he's asleep to the appearance. So for him, the appearance is night, is darkness, unknown, and the reality is alone is what is known. Whereas for us, the reality seems to be unknown. The important word is seems to be, because we don't actually ever know anything other than that. Even when we see the snake, what we're actually seeing is only a rope, but we are misseeing it as a snake. But we never actually ever see anything other than the rope. We just mistake it to be something else. So we are never ever aware of anything other than the one, namely ourselves. But instead of being aware of ourselves as we actually are, we're aware of ourselves as all this multiplicity. This is what Bhagavan implies in verse 18 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, where he says, the world is real, both for the jnani and for the agnani. But for the jnani, for the agnani, the world is limited to the appearance, to the form of the world. For the jnani, the reality shines at the substratum, at the adhara, at the ground. So if we ask Bhagavan, do you see the snake? He'll say, yes, I see the snake. Because what we refer to as the snake is what he sees as a rope. So though he says he sees the world, he sees the snake, he's seeing what we see as a snake, but he sees it as it is, namely as a rope. So he never sees it as a snake. Was that a clear answer?
Yes, thank
Right.
you, Michael. Yeah, he sees it all, but he knows who he is.
He sees all there is. All there is one. We see the one as all, as many. So we need to be careful of the word all, because when we talk about all, we're talking about many things. When he talks about all, he's talking about the only thing.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very appropriate verse to refer to here, that Gita verse, because it's saying, essentially it's saying exactly the same thing. Well, not saying the same thing, it is referring to the same state, the state of wake and sleep. Right.
And the verse Richard is referring to, and Michael is also talking about, is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 69.
Mm.
If you want to refer to that. And Anu is bringing up verse 91 of Akshara Manamale. Is it similar?
What is 91? That is Rapa Halilao, very, very detailed. Yes. Rapa Halilao means what is devoid of day and night, is beyond all these dualities, all these dvandvas, these pairs of opposites. Rapa Halilao, very, very vital. In the house, in the home of open space, which is beyond day and which is beyond day and night. Let us revel, let us enjoy. But when he says, though he says it, Ramit Tidu Vomba, come, let us enjoy. It seems to be plural because he's addressing Arunachala, but actually we can revel in that state only by being one with Arunachala. That we have to understand, because it's beyond all dualities. It's not only beyond day and night, it's beyond even the duality of you and I. As he says in verse 2, Arahu Sundaram Bol, Ahamum Niyumot Mutru Abhinama Irupam. Let us be completely, Mutru means completely, let us be completely non-different, like Arahu and Sundaram. So in actual life, Bhagavan beautifully is blending the seeming duality with the underlying non-duality. So even when he seems to be talking in dualistic terms, let us is plural, let us revel in that home of empty space, the state of reveling is the state of being one with, of being inseparable from, of merging back into what we always actually are.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
So I don't know. My question is sort of about well, let me just say where I go with when I hear this verse and hear your explanation is there's a phrase that I think maybe Maharaj from somewhere, I don't know where it's from, but that we just have to keep practicing, and maybe something will happen. But we don't really have a choice. That what we can do is just keep practicing the self-attention. And
we need to keep practicing until all happening ceases. We are not waiting for anything to happen. We're waiting for the cessation of all happening. All happening happens only in the view of ourself as ego. So the cessation of ego is the cessation of all happening.
okay, so what would you say to this? So sometimes when I wake up and I realize, okay, I'm still here in this, and I'm still seeing all this, and
Yes.
I'm still me. I see that there's an expectation that at some, maybe God, willing, someday that won't be the experience, that the experiencer will have vanished or melted into, everything.
Yes.
And that's how I hear this, what you're describing as this state that transcends all consciousness as I know it, and certainly even dream state and everything else as the I knows it.
It transcends. We need to be clear. When you say all consciousness as you know it, that is, Bhagavan distinguished what he called Suttarivu and Suttatrarivu. Suttarivu, I translate it as transitive awareness. That is what it implies, is awareness of objects. Suttu literally means pointing out. So Suttarivu is transitive awareness. In other words, awareness of phenomena. That is the awareness we are familiar with. But though we are familiar with that awareness, we never cease to be familiar with the underlying awareness, which is the Suttatrarivu, the intransitive awareness, because that intransitive awareness, the pure awareness, is always shining in our heart as our own being, I am. So we overlook the underlying reality because of the appearance. But just like even when you see the snake, because you're seeing the snake, you don't recognize it as a rope. But actually what you're seeing all the time is only a rope. So all the time, there's never a moment when we cease to be aware of intransitive awareness, pure awareness. But we seem to be not aware of it because we see it as all this awareness of multiplicity.
So let's just use that example then that I just gave. So when I wake up and I'm saying, okay, I'm still here, there underneath all of that is the intransitive awareness.
How does your sentence begin?
When I woke up.
No, but okay. And you woke up, and what do you say to yourself?
Okay, I'm still here.
I am. That
Just
stop with the I am. Don't go beyond I am. Don't go to still here.
Okay.
So there is never a moment when we are not aware of that.
Okay, I'm going to stop there because that's really, really good. I want to keep that. Thank you.
Well, that's where we should all be stopping. The problem is we're not stopping there. We are jumping out to know something more. There's nothing more to know than I am. I am is the beginning and the end of everything. The beginning, the middle, and the end. In Gita, Krishna says, Aham Atma Gudakesha. I am the Atma in the heart of all living beings. I am the beginning, the middle, and the end. That I am is the beginning, the middle, and the end. We rise from I am, we dance around on I am, and we merge back into I am. And we are never anything other than that I am. Because who is aware of all this? I am.
Thank you, Michael.
So we need to leave the multiplicity, hold on to the one.
Kumar, I have a question whenever you give me a chance.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, go ahead, Ram.
Michael, whenever we get up, we see the world, which is, let's say, the sun or the houses around me or the neighbors, and the neighbor also sees the same thing. So that leads me to believe that the world is real, though we know that the world is unreal theoretically. Everyone sees the same thing. So I'm like, how can it be unreal when my neighbor, who is a different entity, is able to see the same world as I am? They may interpret it differently, but they are seeing the same sun, houses, other things around. Is that also the creation of the mind? My neighbor there, the houses and the sun, and the mind is thinking.
Exactly. What I was going to say is, when you dream, your neighbor is also seeing the same world. You meet so many people in your dream. Ask anyone in your dream whether they're seeing the same world, and they say, oh, what a stupid question. Of course I'm seeing the same world. It all seems very real so long as you're dreaming. But the reality of the world doesn't actually come from the testimony of others. What makes the world seem to be real is the Dehatma Buddhi. But because we are aware of ourselves as I am this body, what is actually real is only I. When we identify a body as I, that body seems to be real because I alone is real. Since the body seems to be real, and the body is a small part of this vast universe, the whole universe seems to be real. That is why, so long as we are dreaming, the dream seems to be real. All the other people you meet in your dream, they seem to be seeing the world just as much as you are. But the world, well, the body that you take to be yourself, and those other people and the world all derive their reality from you. As soon as you wake up, your identification with that dream body is severed. And how long does it take you when you wake up from a dream? How long does it take you to recognize that it was just a dream? It doesn't take any length of time. As soon as we wake up, we recognize, oh, it was just a dream. We may have been in a very scary situation. We may have been chased by a monster, or we may have been hanging on the edge of a cliff or something. All that dissolves. As soon as we wake up, we recognize, oh, it was all just a dream. Just a dream means it was all just a mental fabrication. We know none of it was real. It only existed in our view. So, so long as we're dreaming, the other people in the dream seem to be seeing the same world as us. So if you were now dreaming and we were having this discussion, you would be referring to the other people and you would be saying they also see the same world. So doesn't that mean the world is real? But if you wake up, then at once you understand, oh, it was all unreal. So this world will always seem to be real so long as we identify ourselves as the body. We will cease to identify ourselves as body only when we wake up.
So the mind is the creator of the whole world.
The mind is creator of everything. As
Okay.
Bhagavan said, like the spider that spins out the thread and draws it back into itself. The mind projects the world and draws it back into itself. In the Upanishads, it said Brahman is the spider that projects the world, but it's not Brahman as Brahman that created. It's Brahman appearing in the form of ego or mind that has projected all this.
Sometimes when I get up in the morning, I have a very bad feeling something bad is going to happen, but there's no reality to that. Why does that happen?
Are we here to explain the phenomena or to know the reality of the one to whom all phenomena appear?
Yep. The second what you said.
So In life, we go through all sorts of experiences. We can go on trying to explain experiences forever, but there's no end to it. Science is probing all that we experience.
The reason why it's important, the reason why I asked that question is, if the mind were serene, then it's easy for me to meditate and be connected with the self. When I have agitation inside, it's hard for me, even when I sit down, for the mind to settle down. And hence I asked that question.
Agitation is the nature of the mind. Serenity is not the nature of the mind. When the mind is in a so-called serene state, it's only relatively serene. True serenity is nothing but the state of pure being. So we are not, but whether your mind is agitated, is relatively more agitated or relatively less agitated, so-called serene, who is experiencing that? That is the serenity experienced by the mind is something that appears and disappears. The mind isn't always serene. A lot of the time the mind is agitated. So these are all transitory phenomena.
So even in the middle of that agitation, I should figure out to whom this agitation is coming and go back to the source, though it seems very difficult at the time.
You don't have to figure it out. It's very obvious to whom it is. It's to me.
Right.
So it's not a matter of figuring it out. It's a matter of attending to the one to whom it appears.
Even in the middle of that agitation, though.
Even in the middle of the agitation.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Michael.
Right. The first qualification in the classical texts of Advaita, they talk about the sadhana chatu, I forgot what it's called, chatu something. The first qualification is nitya anitya vastu viveka. We need to distinguish what is permanent from everything that is impermanent. According to Buddha, anityam, sarvam anityam. Impermanent, everything is impermanent. But what is not mentioned, he probably did mention, but it's not mentioned in most of the Buddhist texts, is this is, when he says everything is impermanent, that's referring to all phenomena. Everything that appears and disappears is impermanent. But to whom does it all appear and disappear? The one to whom it appears and disappears, if we analyze it, is ego. Throughout the waking and dream state, ego seems to be permanent, but even ego ceases to exist in sleep. So what is permanent is not even ego. It is the basis of ego, that from which ego rises and into which it subsides, and which is always shining as the adhara, the adhisthana, the ground, the support for the appearance of ego. Ego is the adjunct conflated awareness. I am this body, I am this person. The adhara, the base, is I am. So I am alone is what is permanent. Everything else is impermanent, including ego, to whom everything else appears and disappears, in whose view everything else appears and disappears. So we just need to hold on to the one reality, which is ever shining clearly as our own being. It is so simple. There's only one problem, our lack of love to hold on to that. And we lack that love because we're still so interested in all the appearance, in all the things that are happening.
In my case, I'm not interested in outside to a large extent, but the agitation sometimes doesn't let me. But to your point, I just need to investigate.
Agitation is there because you're concerned about things other than yourself. If you were concerned about nothing other than your own being, there would be no scope for any agitation. We shouldn't delude ourselves by saying we are not interested in any of these things. Our interest in the external world may have diminished to some extent, but still we are here because of our interest in phenomena, interested in experiencing this or that, or
Makes sense, Michael. I
Yeah.
think I get
Yeah.
that.
yeah.
So,
I have one last comment, Michael. Having a person like you who has done the sadhana and coming from you has a huge impact in my sadhana. I just want to make it clear. You may have said it very ordinarily, and between someone else saying and you saying, there is a level of authority which helps me to go back and say, yep, this is going to work. Let's keep going. So I appreciate you being on the call.
It's nothing to do with me. It all comes only from Bhagavan. Any assurance I have, it comes from Bhagavan. So let's go back to the source. That Bhagavan who is ever shining in our heart as our own being. He is the source of all this.
Thank you.
He's ever shining in our heart as our own being, but he graciously appeared out in outward form as Bhagavan Ramana to give us this assurance in the form of his teachings, and to show us the necessity of turning. It shows that there's no alternative but to turn back within. If we don't turn back within, we continue going round and round in this endless wheel of samsara.
right. Thank you, Michael. P.V. Ramanamurthy, you want to go ahead with your question?
Yes. Namaskaram, Michael.
Namaskaram.
I think by the time I wrote the question, you've been answering the same thing, but nevertheless, I will ask
Right.
the question. So, can jnani turiya state be understood as jnani pure awareness operates in the world, seeing pure awareness in each and every one, and also quite aware of appearances, whereas for ajnani, pure awareness is covered by the root I thought, going outward, failing to be pure awareness, and not seeing pure awareness in others.
Yes.
So is this
well,
correct?
From our perspective, we can say the jnani sees everything as pure awareness. What that actually means is the jnani sees only pure awareness. What we see as everything, the jnani sees as pure awareness. Because the jnani is nothing other than pure awareness, and pure awareness cannot be aware of anything other than itself. What is aware of anything other than itself is impure awareness. Pure awareness means awareness that is only awareness. That implies devoid of any objects, any phenomena, any appearances. So Bhagavan is nothing but pure awareness. He knows nothing but pure awareness. He loves nothing but pure awareness. He rejoices in nothing but pure awareness, because that is what he is. But we see the same pure awareness as ourself, the subject, and all this multitude of objects. What actually exists is only one. We are seeing that one as many. Bhagavan is seeing that one as one. He's seeing it by being it.
Yes.
So if we want to see it, we have to be it.
Yes, but somewhere
I think Murugan has recorded in a footnote somewhere, but Bhagavan once said in English, seeing is being.
Yes, somewhere it is a bit hard to understand or appreciate because we know Ramana Maharshi has written so much, has functioned in the world.
All in our
So,
view. In his view, he has done all this without ever doing anything. He says in the 15th paragraph of Nana, he says all the Panchakritya, that is the Shrishti, Sthiti, Samhara, Tirodhana, and Anugraha, the creation, sustenance, destruction, the veiling, and the grace. All these 5 divine functions happen Esan Sanidana Visesha Matratal by the mere special nature of the presence of God. So presence means being. So Bhagavan doesn't do anything. Just by being as he is, everything happens as it's meant to happen.
yes,
He is that one Parameshwara Shakti by which all karyas are happening, but without they all happen by him without him doing anything, by him just being as he is.
And untouched by the events in the world.
Yes. Even no karma attaches to him. He clearly says in that 15th paragraph.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael.
Right. And about appreciating it, we can appreciate to some extent by means of our intellect. We can have some inkling of what he's talking about, but we cannot fully comprehend it. We cannot fully appreciate it except by dissolving back into that and being that. Uڵḷadu Khan, becoming food alone is seeing. So only when we are swallowed by him can we know him. We can know him, we can see him only by being him. And in order to be him, we need to cease being what we now take ourselves to be.
Thank you, Michael.
Right.
Thank you, Michael. I think I think we are almost done with the questions. So I may use this time to refresh a couple of points, reinforce a couple of points. You mentioned the use of the 2 terms, transitive awareness and intransitive awareness, for Suttarivu and Suttatrarivu respectively, which is something new compared to other translators, right? I just wanted to stress that because a lot of people may just read it and just go right through it and not focus on that particular word. When in your books and Path of Sri Ramana and so forth, we use that term in your blog. People see that term over and over again. So what Michael means by transitive awareness is what used to be translated as objective knowledge by other translators in the past. So meaning the awareness in which there is an object. And when I was, when I was working at Path of Sri Ramana and I saw this, and also when I was reading your blog, the beauty of that term really sunk into me, because if you use objective knowledge for Suttarivu, then what's the opposite you would use for Suttatrarivu? You get stuck there.
Well,
So,
you can say non-objective, but
exactly, you can't say non-objective.
Objective, it's the terms objective and subjective are used in so many different ways.
Yeah.
We talk about subjective experiences, objective knowledge they talk about in philosophy. But it's all very, very vague. But transitive means the awareness, but transitive awareness is awareness that has an object. Intransitive awareness is awareness for which there are no objects.
Very simple and so nice and beautiful.
Yeah.
Just wanted to thank you for that.
Yeah.
That was really, probably that was the best way to describe those two terms,
Yeah.
Sutarivu and Sutatrayu.
I don't know, somehow Bhagavan gave me that term, but it struck me that is the most appropriate term.
Because the only other location in English where you see those two terms is when we describe the verbs, right? Transitive verb and intransitive verb.
I've also seen these words, transitive and intransitive, used in philosophy with respect to consciousness, but they're using it in a slightly different sense. The modern philosophy, modern academic philosophy, it has a huge amount of confusion about consciousness because they fail at the first, they fall at the first hurdle. They don't distinguish what is aware from what it is aware of. So often they talk about, they often define consciousness as conscious experience, what it is like to be something. But the experience is what we're aware of. It's not what is aware. We have to, in order to begin to investigate awareness, we first need to distinguish what is aware from everything it is aware of. That is where Advaita starts from. Neti, whatever is, any object, any phenomenon is not I. That is the drisya viveka. That is what is lacking. That has to be the starting point. We have to distinguish the knower from the known, the seer from the seen. That is what is totally lacking in modern Western philosophy. So even though some philosophers have used these terms, transitive and intransitive, they're using it in a different sense because they haven't even got the basics right.
Right. So I think that's something whenever we are reading or listening to Michael's works, it's good to keep in mind those two terms, transitive awareness and intransitive awareness. And then another...
The equivalent terms used in classical Advaita, intransitive awareness is referred to as pure awareness.
Right.
And transitive awareness is referred to as Chidabhasa. So Suddha Chaitanya, pure awareness, that is what Bhagavan calls Sutatrarivu, the intransitive awareness. The Chidabhasa, even Chidabhasa, how it's translated, it's usually translated as reflected awareness, but that's not quite correct. Abhasa means a semblance or a likeness. So if you look in a mirror, your reflection is an abhasa. It's a likeness. It's not yourself. You're not seeing your own face in the mirror. You're seeing a likeness of your face in the mirror. So rather than saying reflected awareness, because how can awareness be reflected? It makes the awareness sound so... It would be more correct to say a reflection of awareness. But though often the analogy of the sun and the moon are used in this context, that is the sun is the original light, the moonlight is a reflection of the sunlight. But though these analogies are useful to some extent, I think it's more useful to understand Chidabhasa as a likeness of awareness. So Chidabhasa is nothing but ego. Ego is Chidabhasa. Ego is the transitive awareness. Ego is what is transitively aware, to put it more precisely. Why it is not real awareness, it's only a likeness of awareness. Real awareness is not aware of anything other than what is. What is only awareness, so real awareness is not aware of anything other than itself. Being aware of phenomena cannot be real awareness because phenomena are not real. Phenomena are just an appearance. They don't act, though they seem to exist in the view of ego, they don't actually exist. Phenomena have no, they depend upon ego entirely for their semi-existence because they seem to exist only in the view of ego. So since ego is aware of things that do not exist as if they exist, it is not the real awareness. It is only a semblance of awareness. So it's called Chidabhasa. So Chidabhasa and transitive awareness, they're two ways of describing the same thing. So being aware of anything other than awareness is, in other words, anything other than ourself, anything other than our own being is transitive awareness. Being aware of ourself alone, that is intransitive awareness. So intransitive awareness, or Suddha Chaitanya, pure awareness, is what is always shining as our own being, I am.
And, it's just not like we're discussing this, not just, sort of getting theoretical or, or about semantics. It's actually has a lot of practical significance.
Bhagavan's teachings, everything in Bhagavan's teaching has a practical implication.
Exactly. I just wanted to make sure and clarify that. Because
people sometimes say, I'm not
objects.
interested in this theory, I'm just interested in the practice. But we can't in Bhagavan's teachings distinguish, well, it's not theory, it is the underlying philosophy. If we don't understand the underlying philosophy, we won't be able to put it into practice. Because if we don't understand what we actually are, when we try to investigate ourselves, we'll be investigating something but we are not.
Right.
So we are not that which is transitively aware. We are the reality of that which is transitively aware. That is intransitive awareness, I am. So that is what we need to investigate.
And
people
like
say, be aware of awareness. That's fine if it's understood correctly. If you're trying to be aware of that which is aware, fine. But awareness, everything is awareness. The whole world is nothing but there's no world other than our awareness of it. So we can say, I'm aware of the tree, I'm aware of the window, I'm aware of this, I'm aware of that. That is not what we should be aware of. We should be aware of what is aware.
Right. That is the practice. That's the one sentence. If you want to remember one sentence, that should do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let me move on to along those lines. There's another point I wanted to stress before I move to the next question, which is jnana. That your preferred term for jnana is pure awareness, right?
Well, it depends on the context. The word jnana does mean knowledge, but it means knowledge in different senses according to the context. For example, if we talk about jnayam, jnanam, and jnata, that is, jnaya is what is known, jnana is the knowing of it, and jnata is what knows what the knower. So it's one of the triputi. There, jnana means the knowing of other things. So in some contexts, jnana does mean knowing in the sense of knowing other things. But in its deepest sense, jnana means the pure knowledge. And pure knowledge is nothing but pure awareness. Right. For example, in the Upanishads, when it is said that Brahman is Satyam Jnanam Anantam, Jnanam there means pure awareness. When it is said Prajnanam Brahma, Prajnana means the pure awareness.
Right.
It means only awareness, but we have to understand the awareness it's referring to is the pure awareness.
That's a beautiful Mahavakya, Prajnanam
So,
Brahma.
yeah, one of the problems with Sanskrit terminology used by people when that is, we need, it's very easy when we first come to Bhagavan's teachings or first begin reading Vedanta philosophy, we come across certain terms and we give one meaning for a term. Jnana means knowledge, or jnana means self-knowledge, or something. But we need to appreciate the same terms are used in so many different senses in different contexts.
Right.
But the word sporana, Bhagavan used it in a particular sense because he talked of the aham sporana. Sporana means the clarity or the clear. Sporana actually means shining clearly. So, for example, many people in many of the English books on Bhagavan's teaching, sporana has been translated as throbbing or vibration or something. It is true, a throbbing is a type of sporana. A vibration is a type of sporana. But anything that makes itself known is a sporana. But that's not the sporana Bhagavan's talking about. Bhagavan is talking about, when he's talking about the, he says in Vichara Sangram, in the first section of Vichara Sangram, he says, O Vida Spuripu, a kind of shining. So he's talking about a particular kind of shining. Which particular kind of shining? The clarity of self-awareness, the clarity of I, the clear shining of I. Now we are experiencing I mixed and conflated with adjuncts as I am this body. When we begin by turning our attention back towards I and begin to be aware of I as something distinct from all the adjuncts. We've not completely separated it, but we begin to see more clearly that I is not any of the adjuncts. We see we're able to separate I to some extent from the adjuncts. We're able to put some distance between them. So we're seeing I more clearly as something independent of the adjuncts. That is what Bhagavan refers to as Spuripu, or Sparana, the clear shining of I. But he also, in some places he talks, in Vichara Sangram, for example, he talks about the subsidence of Sparana. In other places he talks about the final thing as in Upadeshasaram, he says Spurati Hrit Swayam, that is, it shines, that reality shines as the heart. So we need to understand from a context the sense in which he uses each term. He often uses the term mind as equivalent to ego, but he also uses the mind in other senses, because he says all thoughts, he says enangale manam, thoughts alone are the mind. But of all thoughts, the first thought is, the root thought is I. Therefore, what the mind essentially is I. He says in verse 18 of Upadesha Undiyar. So we need to understand from a context the sense in which he's using the term mind. Because he often uses the term mind as a synonym for ego. But in one place he says thoughts are mine. I've heard people saying ego is nothing but a bundle of thoughts. That is not what Bhagavan is saying. No. The mind in its broadest sense is a bundle of thoughts, but ego is one thought, the thought I, the root thought. So we need to, we need to see beyond the words to understand what the words are referring to. So how we translate words is very, very important, because we may translate, for example, jnana, in some contexts, certainly it's appropriate to translate it as pure awareness, but not in all contexts, because there's some contexts where it clearly doesn't mean that.
Ambiguity of knowledge, yeah.
So, Michael, what you're saying is ego, mind is a bundle of thoughts, and ego, which is nothing but the I thought, is just one of the many thoughts mind creates, but I thought is the fundamental thought.
It's not just one. It is one. It is the first thought, and it's not created by the mind. Ego is the root of the mind. So ego is the creator of the mind. All the other thoughts are a projection of ego. When Bhagavan talks in the 4th paragraph of Nana as the mind projecting all, causing all thoughts to appear, there he's using mind in the sense of ego. When he said that, like the spider spins out thread from within itself and draws it back into itself, and mind projects the world out of itself and draws it back, their mind means ego.
Right.
So that's why it's since the time of the Upanishads, it's always been emphasized, Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. The first thing that is required is Sravana. Literally means hearing. What it implies is we need to attentively, we need to pay close attention to the words of the Guru, or the words of the scriptures. But merely paying attention to the words is not sufficient. We need to understand what those words mean. So we need to think about it very carefully. We need to make sense of it. So here he's using the word mind in one sense, here he's using it in another sense. If we don't distinguish those two senses, we get confusion. So manana is very, very important. And the Sanskrit word muni, which means a sage, the etymological derivation of muni is it means one who is very skilled in manana. So manana is very, very important. We need to, it's not just a matter of reading the words. We need to understand what the words, what is implied by the words. It's not just the meaning, it's the implication. So manana is a very important skill. And only if we are able to do the sravana and manana properly will we be able to do the nididhyasana, the practice properly. Because if we don't have a clear understanding, we won't be practicing correctly. And as we go deeper in the practice, we get greater clarity, and therefore we're able to go deeper in the sravana and deeper in the manana. So it's an iterative process. Sravana leads to manana, manana leads to nididhyasana. The clarity gained by nididhyasana enables us to go deeper in the sravana and deeper in the manana, and therefore deeper in the nididhyasana, and so on. Bhagavan's teachings are extremely simple, but they're also very deep and subtle. So we need a very subtle understanding, a very nuanced understanding. People say, oh, it's all just words. I'm not interested in all these words. But words are how Bhagavan, because because our attention is going outwards, words are the only means by which Bhagavan is able to communicate to us, to point us in the right direction. Yes, his ultimate teaching is silence. That silence is ever shining in our heart as our own being. It's that silence that gives us the clarity to understand the words properly. And we then need to apply that understanding in the practice. And by the practice, we get greater clarity, and we then have deeper understanding of the words. So we should never be dismissive of Bhagavan's words.
Exactly.
Particularly the words he himself has written, his own original writings, particularly, are most important. And those words have their own power to give us the love to turn within more and more and more.
Exactly. So along that, I probably will use this opportunity to also stress, like, when you're reading the book Path of Sri Ramana, all of these points that Michael and myself discussed, the Aham Swarana, Swarana, then the awareness, transitive awareness, and so forth. We got it all in the publisher's note under the section translation notes. Everything is there. So it's probably very important, crucial, which is what Michael has been stressing. Please go over that before you read the book, because it'll add extra clarity. You know why certain words are being used. That really help us read the text much better.
Yeah.
With that, let me go to the last question for today, from Chandrasekharan. In the last presentation in the UK Ramana group, David Godman talked about Bhagavan touching people and animals when they're about to die as a practice of liberating them. This is so opposite to all the teachings. How are we to take things like this?
Bhagavan may have done all sorts of things when he was in bodily alive. We know he that towards the end of Paraniswami, towards the end of Paraniswami's life, Bhagavan sat with him with his hand on his head and his hand on his chest. He did the same with his mother. In some place it's recorded as if Bhagavan said, but in the case of Paraniswami, he opened his eyes and Bhagavan understood the jiva had gone out or something. He hadn't attained liberation. That's how it's implied in one place. So in the case of his mother, he kept his hands there for longer until her the soul merged back in the source. But elsewhere, I've heard from others that Bhagavan, in fact, I think it's even recorded in some book, but definitely I heard this from Natanananda, but many things were misrepresented. About Paraniswami, Bhagavan very clearly said, who said it was a failure? So Bhagavan very clearly indicated that Paraniswami had attained liberation at that last moment. But in many books, it's given the impression as if Bhagavan didn't succeed there, but he succeeded in the case of his mother. This is people without proper understanding. They hear something, misunderstand it, and report their misunderstanding. So definitely we know Bhagavan did touch. He also touched Pasulakshmi, not at her very last moment. He was with her for some time, and touching her for some time, and then he left, and then she passed away when he wasn't there. But he clearly indicated that she attained mukti. But these are very special cases. We shouldn't think, oh, they got liberation because Bhagavan touched them, but we don't have that opportunity. There were many devotees who died in Bhagavan's lifetime. He didn't do that. Maybe it wasn't necessary in all cases. So one thing we need to understand is Bhagavan's grace is the supreme and infinite power. There can never be any limitations on the power of Bhagavan, on the power of his grace. He and his grace are one and the same. So we shouldn't think that for some reason, some souls were blessed to be in Bhagavan's presence. But even those who were blessed to be in Bhagavan's presence, that doesn't mean that they necessarily got the full benefit of it. There's a verse in Guru Vachaka Kavai where Bhagavan refers to those who grow old in the presence of a jnana guru without their ignorance being dissolved. He compares them to the shadow at the foot of the lamp. So just because someone is in the presence of Bhagavan doesn't necessarily mean that they are fully surrendered to Bhagavan, let's put it that way. Just because people, maybe thousands of miles away, hundreds, thousands of years away, Bhagavan's grace will still be operating. So we shouldn't limit Bhagavan's grace just to that external form. Maybe in a small handful of cases, Bhagavan did apply his touch. That was what was appropriate in the case of those particular souls. But Bhagavan's grace isn't limited to his touch. It isn't limited to a physical. He talks in Nana about the glance of Guru's grace. But that doesn't mean just the physical look. It's not just a matter of being physically seen by Bhagavan. The glance of Guru's grace means if we are, by his grace, drawn to him, if we are drawn to his teachings, if we have love for him, then that is the glance of Guru's grace. So the first thing we need to understand is Bhagavan's primary teaching is Deham Naham, I am not this body. Koham, who am I? Soham, I am he. I am that ultimate reality. So but Bhagavan's teachings, all of Vedanta, in fact, is based on I am not this body. That's the main thing Krishna is emphasizing to Arjuna in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And he takes it up again at the beginning of the 13th chapter, distinguishing the Kshetra and the Kshetrajna, the field and the knower of the field. So we are not this body. That's the first thing to understand. When we are not this body, Guru is not the body. Bhagavan makes it clear. In Nana, he says, Kadavalam Guruvum Unmail Verala. That means God and Guru are in truth not different. So Guru is nothing but God himself. God is not something limited to any particular time or place or any particular name and form. He has appeared in the form of Bhagavan Ramana to give us these very special teachings. So that form of Bhagavan Ramana is to be worshipped and adored, but we shouldn't think that Bhagavan is in any way limited to that name and form. Bhagavan also equally exists in his teachings. So the words of Bhagavan's teachings are also the form of Bhagavan. So we should have so much reverence for his words. But the true form of Bhagavan, his Swarupa, is Aham Swarupa, Atma Swarupa, that which is shining in our heart as I. That he makes very clear. Ariyati Tarajivara Dahavari Jugohail Arivairami Paramatman Arunachala Ramanan, he sang. That is, Arunachala Ramana is the Paramatma who blissfully exists as awareness in the heart of, in the cave of the heart of all from beginning with Vishnu to all the many jivas, all the diversity, the vast diversity of jivas. He's in the heart of all. So from the highest God to the most insignificant, and that which is shining as awareness, as the awareness I am in the heart of all, that is Bhagavan. So these stories are all nice, but we shouldn't let our understanding, we shouldn't let our view of Bhagavan be limited to just these stories. And the problem with stories, just like the people who've recorded Bhagavan's teachings, everyone records according to their understanding. So there are a lot of inaccuracies. One thing I learned when I first came to Tiruvannamalai is how many different versions there were of the same story. Sometimes in those days, in the mid-70s, there were still many devotees who'd been with Bhagavan from the time when he was living on the hill. So people have been many years with Bhagavan. Sometimes if you hear a story from one devotee and mention it to another devotee, they'll say, no, it wasn't like that. I was there at the time, it was like this. Two people who were there at the same time had two completely different versions of the same story, because everyone sees through their own colored glasses. So we have to take all stories about Bhagavan with a big pinch of salt. The true story of Bhagavan is just one word. Well, in Tamil it's one word, Irikkareng, I am. That's the true story of Bhagavan. He is pure being, pure awareness. He is Satyam Jnanam Anantam. So the problem is that people who tell the stories, they have a limited view of Bhagavan. We shouldn't allow our view of Bhagavan to be limited. He's made it very, very clear that he is the Paramatma shining as awareness in the heart of all. He's the supreme reality. He's the ultimate. He's God himself, Brahman itself. Words cannot adequately. He's Satyam Jnanam Anantam. No words can adequately say. But most importantly of all, he's our own reality. He's that which is shining in our heart as awareness, as the awareness I am. So the stories, it's nice to read the stories, but we should be ready to take everything with a pinch of salt and understand that there are a lot of inaccuracies, and that most of the stories are told by people who have a limited view of Bhagavan.
Right.
Is that a satisfactory answer to that question?
I think
Yes, that's super helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
so.
Okay.
Thank you. It's very good. With that, we'll conclude today's session.
There's a verse in Guru Vachakavai, I can't remember the number of the verse, in which Bhagavan describes those who, though the jnana guru is nothing but the space of jnana itself, the infinite space of jnana itself, those who take him to be a mere physical form, I can't remember the exact words, I'm paraphrasing, are the vilest of sinners, something like that, Bhagavan says. I can't remember the exact, it's very beautifully put there. But because we limit ourselves with the body, we tend to see Bhagavan limited to that name and form. But though we see him as that name and form, we need to understand he's the infinite reality that happened out of its supreme grace has appeared in this name and form. So we while adoring and revering this name and form, we need to understand that he's in no way limited to this name and form.
Krishna says that in Gita as well. Avajananti Mudha Manushim Tanumashritam. It's exactly what you're saying is people think he's the body and therefore
Exactly. People thought so many things of Krishna. He's just a cowherd boy. He's just a magician. Does all these magic tricks. But very, very few understood who he really is. It will always be the case. Even now, I mean, though even those who take themselves to be Ramana Bhaktas or Krishna Bhaktas, how many really understand him? The truth is, none of us understand. In order to understand correctly, as Bhagavan says, Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, becoming food alone is seeing. We can know him as he actually is only by being swallowed by him. Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu is the final words in verse, is it 22, I think, of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu. Is it 22? No, it must be 21, I think.
While you're searching for it, the verse, the Guru Ashoka verse you're trying to quote is verse
it's 21.
274.
Sorry, what's the verse number?
274. 274 is the Guru Ashoka verse you're quoting earlier.
Okay.
274.
274.
I'm going to read your translation. Those who do not have the clarity of mind or heart to know that the Jnana Guru, who seems to be or appears as a human form, even though always actually remaining firmly as a supreme space of Satchit, is in fact the formless one namely Brahman, are indeed the foremost in wicked conduct and sin.
Yeah. Durachara papam.
Yeah.
Yeah, he puts it
So
very
he
strongly.
uses a pretty strong word there.
Yeah.
And I remember when you quoted this verse, the reason I remember is because you quoted this verse when we were discussing, we made a video called Who or What is Bhagwan, just you and I. And during that discussion, you quoted this verse. And someone, when they listen to it, they say, "Oh, this is pretty too strong, isn't it? You know, how can he call us vilest of sinners just because we don't realize him who he is?" To which I don't remember. I think you responded on the YouTube channel in the comment that chiding is actually good. It's a manifestation of love, something to that effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways.
If a parent really loves the child, there are times when they need to chide the child.
Exactly, yeah. Good. So with that, we'll conclude today's session, and we will meet again next month, which actually is two Saturdays from now.
Yes.
We'll be discussing verse 33 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham. Very good. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you.